So it's my absolute privilege to introduce Noel Vallejo. It ends up that our wives kind of grew up together in the same part of New Mexico, more or less, a little bit of distance, but well enough that they knew each other. And so it's kind of fun to see Carrie here today. I assume that's you behind the mask, is that right, Carrie? Good. And it's also fun to have her husband, Noel, with us, who's actually going to speak. Noel is one of 10 children. Value rich, they appreciated one another and respected others. The sense of family was paramount. Values that would cultivate tremendous success nearly 40 years later, attracting a numerous talent desirous to hang their own shingle with TestOut. Lad Timpson, Vice President of Marketing for TestOut, says of Noel, his leadership style is one of caring, and he doesn't have to say a lot for us to know that. Having navigated his fair share of ebbs and flows, accompanied by many bright and wonderful colleagues, Noel stands at the front of a global company serving more than 10,000 instructors, having trained more than 10 times that number of students for IT certification and administering over 15,000 TestOut Pro certifications for performance-based learning. Noel Vallejo and the TestOut Corporation have been able to make a difference in countless lives through education using breakthrough technology. And then I'd just like to add to this just a couple of personal observations. Number one, as UVU has struggled to kind of move online. We moved a lot online. Of course, with the pandemic, we've moved more online. And we kind of are playing a little bit of catch up with companies like TestOut who have broken ground and led the way. And so we're able to learn from TestOut in that regard. And then the second thing I'd like to mention is, you've all seen the new building going up over here, the Scott C. Keller building. You should know that Noel Vallejo and his wife Carrie were two of the first donors, major donors to this building. And as a matter of fact, and I shared this with Noel when we toured the building together last week, I'd never raised $25 million for a building before now. We now have done that as a team, Jerry and the president and others who have helped with that who are here. But it was really in that first meeting when we sat down at the Black Sheep Cafe and talked about doing something. And I had indicated that it was very important to me that we have in a major space a business leader of Latino background whose name would be up in that space for our Latino students and other students to see as they went through that building to say, I can see myself being a successful business person. And it's Noel Vallejo who stood up and took that challenge and is naming the auditorium where we will hold these lectures starting in, next 2022. He took that challenge. And not only did he help me accomplish that goal, but he gave me the confidence that we could accomplish the overall goal of 25 million. So I don't know, you know that because I told you last week, but that really was an important moment for me in knowing that we could get this building done. So with that, I think I'm turning it over to straight to Noel. And please put your hands together for Noel Vallejo.
If Norm asks you to go to lunch, you need to be careful because on the way there, Norm said that he had 2 or 3 people going to be at lunch, and I couldn't figure out why he would ask me because at the time I really didn't know him. And as I'm driving to the restaurant, it hit me. Okay, this guy wants money. And so I called my wife. And I said, sweetheart, I know why we're going to lunch. At least I think so. And I said, they're going to want some money. And she said, well, you just tell them we are already giving away some money. So she was prepping me to say, hey, just tell them no. And so we went to lunch. We started talking, realized that his wife knew my wife. They grew up in the same area. So he picks up his phone, calls his wife, Dolly, get Carrie on the phone. And he suckered us right into the thing. He got my wife to say yes, and so we were here. And we're so happy to be a part of UVU. The topic today that I've chosen, and I'll need to read it, but your life is made up of experiences that will one day lead you to your career or a business to start. How to be aware of those experiences that will help you along the way. As you're walking down the path of life, you'll be able to one day look back and look at experiences that you've had or connections to people that you made that will guide you in either starting a business or in your career, whatever you decide. When looking back in your life, it's easy to see because you'll be able to place those connections. But looking forward is much more difficult. How does this one encounter, how does this one experience going to help me in my career? And I started to doing a little bit of research on President Tuminis, and how does, as I read her a little bit about her, how does a poor girl from the Philippines, and they described it as in the part where she lived was a slum, get to be here today, sitting in front of you? What encounters did she have? So I didn't know that President Tuminis was going to be here, but I wrote some questions for her just in case. And I asked permission before I started that she might be able to share some of those things that would help our students with hope and a vision for their life. And so I have a question, if you'll come up, President. And these were the questions that I had for her, and we're so lucky to have her. There are three women in my life that I would say I've just in awe with them. One of them is Gail Miller, and all that she's done, and you've introduced her. The other one is you. And I think to myself, how did she do it? And so I'd like for her to share the answers to the questions that I have. I have three. One of them is, what experiences do you feel have been impactful to you being the president of the university? All the experiences that you can look back in your life and say, that's maybe a reason why I'm standing here. Why am I?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much to Noel and Carrie for being here. I see the Vallejos as like salt of the earth people, so thank you for being here. So the answer to that question, what experiences have led me, and of course there are many, but the first one that I would single out is education. I think for those who've read my life story, I really came from the slums where my father earned less than $50 a month, and there were 7 children to support. So there was no electricity, no running water, no new clothes, no shampoo. I never knew shampoo till I was much older. So in that instance, what kind of changed the whole trajectory was Catholic nuns finding me and giving me an education. And so once I had learned to read was huge, to add, to do numbers, then I realized there was a whole world of possibility out there. So that's really important. Another experience that I would single out is I joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints when I was 10. And because this was a very small branch, and the church is all, just so many activities. So I had all these opportunities at a very young age to be a teacher, to be the secretary taking attendance. And as I look back on that, there were actually leadership and managerial opportunities. And I think that is also really important in helping me become president. And then I think just from a general sense, the third thing that I would say is when you grow up poor and you cannot throw money at your problems, you learn to be creative, to problem solve, to be an entrepreneur. Even though I would not have called it then, I didn't know the word entrepreneur and what that meant. But it was really being entrepreneurial. So those are the 3 things that I would say foundationally were experiences that led me to be in this position today.
Great. Here's my next question. Which experiences were you aware of that at the moment you felt they were going to be impactful?
Yes, so that one is a great question because I had not really thought about that. But the one that I would share today is the day I got my acceptance letter to Harvard University.
Wow.
So think, if you will, of a kid who grew up in my circumstances, and Harvard was not part of my universe. I just could never have thought about it. The day that I got my acceptance letter to Harvard University, it's crazy. I had this feeling in my stomach. This is going to open unbelievable doors for me. Wow. And it did. It was just like a magical, weird, surreal thing. And at the moment it was happening, as I held that letter, I just knew. I just knew this is going to take me places.
Something's going to be different.
Yeah.
Last questions. And it's my own question, but I just wonder what's next for you. This is a moment in your life, a moment in time. What do you see?
So, I mean, this job is very big and there's so much for me to do. I am not really thinking about the next job, but I am thinking more about how I influence, how to have a larger impact on the world. And I have published one book. It's a scholarly book on Russian nationalism with thousands of footnotes. Nobody wants to read that. So what's next for me, even though I think it's a decent book, it covers 150 years of Russian history, from the Crimean War to the time that Putin became head of the of Russia. But what's next for me is really, I would love to write a book. In fact, I have these books in my head all the time. They're all floating in my head, and I need to get them on paper, because that's the way that we leave behind the things that we have learned, the things that our lives are finite. And I still think I'm young, but our lives are finite, and no one is assured so much time. And so a book is really important to me right now when you say what's next.
Wow, how fascinating. Thank you.
I just have to write it between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So wonderful. You know, I have to just think, when I think of you as students, how lucky you are to have a president like her. I would say she probably is the best thing, or let's just caution a little bit, but let's say one of the best things that's ever happened to the university here, to have a president like her. And so I'm just in awe with what she's done. Some of the things that you said, President Tuminis, have really been part of my life, and that is growing up with nothing. Now, I know nothing here may be a grand thing in the Philippines, and I've been to the Philippines, and or nothing here might be something grand in some other country. But for me, you know, we grew up with 10 kids, and there's certain experiences in life that I would have to say, you know, I don't want that experience. I'd rather not go through it. But as I look back at my life and the success I've had in business, I've realized that had it not been for some of those experiences, that I probably wouldn't have the courage that I've got today. Because, you know, I'd come home to Carrie and she'd say, well, what happens if to my wife, what would happen if we lost everything? And I go, well, I've been there, so I already know what it's like. So nothing to me, or being poor, is not anything. I mean, we can eat, we'll find food, we'll do something. So it wasn't as scary for me in doing that. And so I had the courage to move forward. Having grown up with 10 kids in the family, my father at one point in that period of growing up was not there. And being the second oldest or the first boy in the family, was the responsibility was with me. And to at least help mother with the children. And did I like it? Not at all. I felt like I was being cheated. You know, my life was being cheated. It was, you know, I had to sacrifice so much. I did end up going on a mission, but almost didn't because of the need that my family had. And so I remember the first day I went grocery shopping on a mission, and some of the other elders felt like, you know, they were sacrificing so much, and I just felt like I got a divorce from 10 children, and I was buying a gallon of milk for me. And I can't tell you, I looked at that and I said, that's for me. You know, it wasn't for 10 kids, you know. And so for me, I had a whole different perspective in looking at the mission life. It was freedom for me, you know. It wasn't so much a sacrifice of giving up something. So I look at that, and it gave me what my experience growing up gave me was a fire. a fire that I didn't want to be poor anymore. And it gave me strength, and it gave me, I gained my leadership responsibilities from a young age, helping to raise these children. And I felt like there were many things that I could say, and you will one day say, gosh, I hated going through it, but it was the best thing. Getting laid off twice, and the second time coming home to my wife and telling her that I had lost my job. And of course, it's emotional. We're living in an apartment. We have 2 little twin girls, 3 years old. And I came in and she started to cry. And I just held her, told her it was going to be okay. And I heard her say to me, Noel, you've been thinking about starting your own business. Why don't you? And that was a Thursday that I got laid off. On Monday, and I've shared this story before, but on Monday, I dressed up in a white shirt, a tie, what I called my church pants. And as I was dressing up in the bedroom, my wife looked at me from the covers and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm starting my own business. And she said, what is it? And I said, I don't know. And I didn't know, but I had a little desk in the bedroom, and I dressed up every day with a tie and a shirt. And I asked students, because I've been able to travel throughout the United States, I've been able to travel to the Philippines and share my story, I've been able to travel to many parts of the world and many third world countries and share my story. And I asked the kids, why did I dress up? I mean, nobody was there, nobody could see me. And invariably, I'll get one student that catches the vision of what I'm trying to say, and they would say, you needed to change your mind. And I said, yes, I needed to change my mind. I needed to believe that I could. And but those experiences while you're going through it never seem to be grand or exciting or fun. But because of those experiences, because of those things that happen in life that don't seem to be positive, they propel you. They move you in a direction you would probably not go into. I was secure working for a job at the time, but because of it, it led me to start this business. Today, we've been in business 29 years, 30 years next year. On November 11th of this month, we turned 29. They don't fit in my bedroom, so we have a building, and it's been, as I look back into my life, there has been those experiences that have propelled me and sent me on a direction that I probably would not have picked myself. There have been encounters with people where I just, you could call it chance. If you'll read an article, Razband, called By Divine Design, and read that article about how he looked back in his life and he saw that it was like a chess piece, that his moves were made, not by accident. So let me give you an example of something. I'll get into the business side, but of something that I had with in meeting my wife, because finding a spouse that can support you and is backing you up is probably one of the most critical things you can have while running a business. So here I am. I had been off a mission. I had stayed at home for a while. I decided I got a call from a gentleman who wanted to hire me, and he's in California. And California's got the nice beaches. I'm a single guy. It just seemed wonderful to go there. And so I go to California, and I just about Christmas time, I head home to visit the family. My bishop says to me, and I'm 25 years old, really dated maybe twice when I'd been home. I just figured if having 10 kids is really what life's all about, I don't want to get married. So I never had any desire to date. And but so I go off to California, and I date, and I go out, and I figured, hey, I'm on the path to get married. That's what I should be doing. Well, what ended up happening when I came back from for vacation during that year, the bishop asked to speak with me, an LDS bishop. And I meet him outside of the house, and he says, "You need to come home. Your family needs you." And I said, "But Bishop, I can't come home. If I do, I'll never get married." And he says, "No, your duty is to come home and help take care of your family." So here's a single guy coming back, packing up his stuff. I hadn't been there just less than a year, and that summer I met my wife. Now, if she was the one I should be marrying, I would have never married her because I was not there. That summer I met her. Can you imagine? Was it by divine design? But if you in your life will follow the truths of your heart and your soul to make good decisions, you'll be guided. And I always tell people, listen to your gut. Listen to the feelings of your heart and follow them, and you'll never go wrong. And so I did. That has to be one of the most important decisions I ever made, was to sacrifice what I wanted in my life, to be obedient and come back and help the family that I had been raised, and help each of those 10 or 9, I was the 10th, children in that family. And because I was able to go to school and graduate, I knew that was important to me. 7 of the 10 would also, 8 of the 10 would also graduate from college. First-time generation, so all 8. And I had a good mother, and I had a good grandmother. My grandmother was part Cherokee Indian. And so when I'd sit with my grandmother, one valuable thing I learned from her is to listen. And she'd tell me stories. And then she'd tell me, "Noel, every morning when you wake up, you sit down and you meditate." And she says, "And every morning what I do is I climb the mountain, this mountain that was by our house. And every morning that's what I do." And that was her way of getting in tune with her feelings and with the things that she should be doing. And so from a part Cherokee woman, Indian, I learned how to listen to myself and listen to my feelings. And I run my business that way. I run it with listening to what I should be doing, and it has guided me. So there are people in your life, and there are experiences in your life that will guide you, and they're there for you. And this lecture is for you, not for me, not for President Taminas. It's for you to find where you should be in your life. I've mentioned to you how I lost my job, and I used to work for Noel, and they were an IT company that developed the local area network. They were famous, and they were the largest in what they did. And I ended up working for them for a couple of years before I got laid off and started my business. But while I was there, I came across 2 individuals that would change the trajectory of my life and propel me into where I am today. Now, if you're lucky enough in your life to ask the old people the questions that you have and the direction of your life. So here was my question to one gentleman. I said to him, I know you're quite successful in your life. Can you tell me what I should be doing? And you know who asked that question was the last speaker, Scott Keller, when he said to a person of means, "What can I do?" And the person said, "Obligate yourself." And I thought about that. Obligate, it's such a weird response, right? Obligate yourself. And I said, "Carrie, what does that mean?" She says, "Well, it means commit yourself, be committed to something." So I said to myself, well, here's the question I asked the guy. And I said to him, "What can I do to climb, in life? How can I move beyond where I'm at? Now, like the old guys, this is what he said, write. And I said to him, write? Write about what? And he said, Noel, it doesn't matter what you write about, but people will think you're the expert if you write, and even if you're not, they'll think you are. So I thought to myself, write about what? So I decided to write about the industry that I was in. And as a result of that writing, it got sent out through the US and international. And just one article, just because I had the faith to listen to him and take him for his word. So I wrote an article, and then I got asked to speak at a conference. And so the conference was at a hotel. The room gets filled. They say, sorry, people, we've got to let some people out of this room because the fire marshal, we just have rules. Well, guess what? Nobody would leave. We had people on the aisleway, we had people along this aisleway, and they were sitting down. And I got to deliver my findings of this, what I wrote, some research that I had done. And then I went and I talked to another gentleman, and I asked him, what can I do? And he called me into his office. He said, Noel, if you'll invest stock into Novel, it'll really could be a help to you in your life. And I said to him, how much can I invest? I'd never done anything like that. And he said, you can invest 10% of your income. So I go home and talk to my wife. Of course, we've got the 2 little baby girls in diapers. And she says, we can't do 10%. We already do 10%. And there's no way we can do another 10%. But I told my boys, and this is where I get a little kill. I said, look, if your wife ever tells you not to do something like that, you just do it, okay? And don't listen to your wife. But I did, and I invested 10% of our income. Now, I get laid off. I call Novel the next day, and I said, I've been putting money in the stock. Can you tell me what I have? Now, get this. I have an 82 Chevy Love pickup. I have a 2-bedroom apartment, 2 little girls, and we're just barely making it. And he says to me, this was 29 years ago. He said to me, the guy at HR said to me, you have $20,000. I said, $20,000? President, when you think of $20,000 living in the slums, I think of $20,000 living, with 10 kids. I'd never had $20,000. It was just like, oh my gosh, I never thought I'd have this much money. Well, I knew that I didn't have to run out and go get a job. I took $5,000 of this $20,000, and I started TestOut. $5,000, 29 years later, it has brought me dividends. Unbelievable. In the first year, it paid me back my $5,000, and for the last 29 years, I've lived off of that $5,000 that I invested. Now, it doesn't mean that I didn't go through struggles through the process. It would be a shame for you to believe that it wasn't difficult, because it was. But the thing that made me able to go through it and hang on was because I knew I'd already been poor. I knew what it was like. I knew I wouldn't die, but it let me take the step and have the courage to do something. And as I went through those difficult times, I just hung on. Just like Scott told us last week. When 2008 hit, he said he just buckled down, he held down, and he waited until it pops back up again. So the second piece of advice, the first one, which was to write, that next Monday I got on the phone, picked up the phone, and started to call people selling a product. It was selling a product to the people that I had already associated with. And this is the question they asked me when I picked up the phone in my bedroom, thinking they didn't know where I was, but I picked up the phone. And as I started to sell this product, this was the question they asked me every time I picked up the phone. Are you the guy that wrote that article? And I'd say, yes. Their response back to me was, I'm in. Unbelievable. It gave me credibility in a market that nobody knew me really except for that article. And that first year in a 2-bedroom apartment, I earned $100,000. It was because I listened to that man who said right. So, an old man to you tells you today, write, do well in school, everything that you go through will be a benefit to your life. Even if you think it's not, it will be a blessing in your life. You will encounter people that you would have never thought that would help you. Like I was introduced to these 2 gentlemen who helped me today. I hope in part that I would give back to the younger people and help them in their lives. How many more minutes do I've got?
You have 15 more minutes.
15 more minutes. Let me share with you one other, or a couple of other experiences. How do you really, well, let me just start with this. How can you really recognize, looking forward in your life, that some encounter with someone will change and help your life? How is an experience in your life going to help you? It's difficult to see forward. Even President Tamina's, I bet inside she probably knows something she really wants to do. And I'd say President of the United States, that's what I go for. If that were possible, I'd say we need this lady up there. You are so lucky, as I mentioned, to have her. Well, I'm hiring people, 2 individuals that I would hire in my life that would help our company. I'm hiring for my first programmer. I don't know anything about programming. I'm a marketing guy, I'm a sales guy, but I'm not a programmer. So I really don't know who I'm looking for. The guy walks in as a response to the ad. He's tall and he's old. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, programmers are supposed to be young guys, you know, somewhere in the back, you know, and here's an old man. He comes in, sits down, and he says, well, I really on retirement, but I wanted to apply for this job. And as he sat there, I thought, nah, there's no way I'm going to hire this guy. He just doesn't fit the young guy. And he started to talk to me, and something inside of my gut said, hire him. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, he doesn't fit that profile. And he said, just hire him. I hired him. In our business, what I wanted to do was develop computer simulations, something that wasn't being offered by the competition. And so I would find out later that he simulated the shuttle. Before they built it, before they knew it could land, he simulated it. Amazing. I had the best of the best, the most talented individual that would develop a foundation for our company in developing simulations. And he taught these young guys how to do it, the guys that I hired after him. But he said foundationally this, when I say listen to yourself, it will help guide you. My own mind would tell me, no, you don't hire this guy. But because I did, we would be the best in the market for what we develop. The second person I hired on our team was, I went to USU, Utah State University in Logan. And I went to the professor who was well known for instructional design. He was famous. And I went up to him and I said, Dr. Merrill, I said, I want to hire the best instructional designer you have. We're going to develop some courses and I need the best. And he said to me, Noel, you can have anybody you want except her. And I said, who? He said, her. That was the girl I took to lunch. Her name was Haiyan Chin from China. And she was brilliant. And I sat down with her lunch and I told her what I was doing. And I said, I need you. She said to me, I will come. So now I have Vardell Lines, the famous guy who simulated the shuttle. And I've got Haiyan Chen from China, who the professor said, don't hire. That was his student. That was who he was using. But you don't tell that to a young guy like me who, at the time, don't touch her. She was the first one I went after. And so instrumental for me, yes. They were the foundation of what would propel us in the next 29 years. So what we do, we have some very big companies. We have the largest book publishers in the world. Many of you the schools buy from. And so we're at a conference. And we're just little guys. I mean, we're on Main Street in Pleasant Grove. We have a small amount of people, core people. And their guy at the conference, while we were having a booth right next to them, tells one of our guys, says, "We've been told to take you out." So we were a threat to these guys, and they're multi-billion-dollar publishers, okay? Just big. And they have been unable for the last 29 years to take us out. Because I told our guys at our company, I said, "Look, guys, if you can only develop one product, I don't care about developing 100, but just develop one product for me and do it well, and don't worry about like the other publishers have thousands of books. And we've developed that one product very well, that when we go back to the customer and present another product, they say yes. And then we go back and present another product, and they say, that's the great strategy. If we can prove ourselves with one." My topic, my lecture, I guess, today is coming to an end. I say to you, it's difficult to see into the future how an individual or how a person or how an experience. But if you can have hope, and if you can live your life as if that person you're meeting in school, that student in your class that you want to network with, will one day be of value to you and you to that individual. I just think it's difficult for us to see into the future. It's easy for me to see in the past, because now I can see those chess pieces. Now I can see those connections. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it. This is going to really sound strange to you. This is my routine. I get into the office, I come in through the back door, which most employees do. I'm an old guy, so I got to go use the bathroom. I go to the bathroom, I kneel down in front of the sink, and my prayer goes like this: "Dear Heavenly Father," and I apologize for those who aren't maybe going into the religious aspect, but it's the truth. And I kneel and I say, "Help me see what I cannot see." And my prayer begins like that, because many times we go to work and we just don't notice things. And so I just need the ability to see what maybe I couldn't see with my normal eyes, and be sensitive to those things. And I ask a blessing upon the people who work there. I ask a blessing upon the children of the families that belong there. And I think that if we're not humble, and if we don't show gratitude, and if we're not students, we will not succeed very far. So be open to the things. And that's what I do, Tom, is I just ask for insight, the ability to solve problems. I get calls, I am not lying, at least twice a week, for people wanting to buy our company. Who would have thought our company, what we do is develop online curriculum for schools. 2,000 hits. If you look historically at our company sales, can you believe that we would have what we used to generate in years past, we would do in 1 month? That's what it's done for us. COVID is not fun. Nobody likes it. For certain companies, it has propelled them. But it took me 29 years to get to that point where sales have just skyrocketed for us. I enjoy business. I don't know, I don't have any sights in mind to sell our company. It has been a great blessing to me and to many others because I've been able to help. And I'm in a position to help now, better than I was when I was trying to raise 10 kids. So we have other things that we're doing and helping communities. We have one community down south that we're involved with in trying to help lift them a little bit in their community. And I just love that. I love helping. So I don't see it changing too soon. I'm pretty boring because I don't read fantasy. I love autobiographies and I love business books. I'm on a quest to learn and to learn from others. And
So name one you've read recently that you might recommend.
Oh, if I wish I had enough copies to send it out to everybody, but if you'll read the book, Up Your Game, from David Bradford, it's about networking. It's only about this thick. It's a small book, but it's amazing. I've given one to every one of my kids. I've given one to everyone at my company. But if you'll buy that book, it could change you. One day I was talking to my wife and I said, I wish we could be like other families that had a 4x4 or four-wheelers or boat or something that they really love and they go do as a family. And she says, Noel, we do. And I said, what is it? We go to the farm. And every summer I have my kids, when they were home, and we'd plant tomato plants. And we'd sometimes plant 100. You know, I think big, and we'd give them away. But it was a way to teach my children how to work. And it was a way for me to be with them. So I'd hire their friends, and we'd have 10 kids every morning. Carrie would drive them down, I'd be there, and she'd drive them back to their homes. And every summer we'd do that. And I'd be the first one on their application for a reference. And I loved it. I loved referring them to their first big employer. They maybe were 10 or 12 or 13 years old when they worked for us. And we grow a garden. If I had to say what's one ingredient of our success, it would be that we spend a long time trying to find the right person. They come in. I used to interview everybody that would come in, and I don't anymore, but the people I have working for me know what we're looking for. And one, do they have the aptitude? Are they really good at what they do? And number two, do they fit our culture? And it doesn't mean they have to be of the same religion or anything. We don't do that. What we're talking about is, do they have the values and do they fit? And I'll get the engineering team say, we found somebody we want to hire, and we're up against some deadlines. We really need to do it. We need to hire them. And I'd say, are they really good? Are they the best at what they do? And they would say, well, not quite the best, you know. And I'd say, well, then don't hire them. Well, we're up against a deadline. Forget about the deadline, you know. So we push that all aside and we say, you just have to hire the very best. And I'll have them come in and I'll interview them. And after 29 years of doing that, I've gotten really good at it. The difficulty is, well, it's not to say that we have never made mistakes, because we have. But when they get hired on with us, they just stay. We don't have the turnover. And it probably helps that I send their kids for their birthdays a gift card and a birthday card. Because when that person wants to leave to Amazon or wherever, they go, Dad, you just can't do that. Or Mom, you just can't leave. And so I've got to battle an internal civil war if that individual decides they want to leave. It's not why I did it, but it's what employees have told me when they thought about leaving.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.